Hello and welcome to the Paxmundi show. This is your host, Nigel Rolland, and tonight I will be talking about the ever-expanding, unending global war of terror and how we can try to resist giving up our freedoms and rights in return for a false sense of security from the orchestrated terror of that global war on terror. Remember, if you want to join in, call in and chat, you can Skype on Bob's Backyard or phone +44 161 298 0298. If you're in the UK, that's 0161 298 0298. So, first of all, I just thought I'd mention something that I read in The Economist, and it's more along the lines of nano drones. So in a previous show, I was talking about the black helicopters, these small 4-inch helicopters that are being used by the British Army. But there was a report in The Economist this week about micro nano drones, actually 13 centimeters long, and these are not the helicopter type, but they're actually ornithopters, replica insects with flapping wings. So the sci-fi world of total surveillance by miniature drones of Philip K. Dick and Ian McNabb is coming closer every day. So news from the front lines of the ever-expanding global war on terror. In Bolivia first, the Bolivian President Evo Morales has ordered the expulsion of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, from Bolivia. In a speech, Morales cited recent comments of Secretary of State John Kerry referring to Latin America as the US backyard. He also accused USAID of using international assistance for political destabilization. Evo Morales said some institutions from the US Embassy continue to conspire against this process, against the people, and especially against the national government. And that is why, using this gathering and the 1st of May, we've decided to expel USAID from Bolivia. USAID is leaving Bolivia. I ask our brother foreign minister to immediately speak with the US Embassy. We want no more USAID which manipulates, uses our brothers with charity. Morales has previously expelled the US ambassador and the US Drug Enforcement Agency in 2008, prompting the US to ban Bolivia's ambassador in a tit-for-tat move. In Washington, the State Department spokesperson rejected Evo Morales' claims and said the United States is mulling a response. He said the US government does deeply regret the Bolivian government's decision to expel the US Agency for International Development. We deny the baseless allegations made by the Bolivian government. Whether we'll take an action in response is yet to be determined, but the people who suffer because of this are the Bolivian people who were receiving our assistance. So more power to the government of Bolivia for resisting US interference and hegemony. Over in North Korea, the North Korean government has sentenced a US citizen to 15 years of hard labour. Kenneth Bai is accused of committing unspecified crimes against the state. Kenneth is a native of South Korea and is a naturalized US citizen. The North Koreans claim that he entered the country on a false passport, and that he was detained after taking pictures of starving children. It is understood that Bai may be used as a bargaining chip should the US and North Korea hold talks. The FBI has recently updated its most wanted terrorists list, and they've added the former Black Panther Assata Shakur to their most wanted list. This is 40 years after a killing for which she was charged and was convicted in her absence. Assata Shakur, formerly known as Joanne Chesimand, was found guilty of shooting dead a New Jersey state trooper during a gunfight in 1973. She escaped from prison in 1979 and received political asylum in Cuba. On Thursday, the reward for her capture was doubled to $2 million. Shakur is the first woman added to the FBI's most wanted terrorist list, and she has long proclaimed her innocence and will continue to remain freely in Cuba. Over in Iraq, it has been the deadliest month since 2009. New figures show that at least 460 people were killed in growing sectarian and political violence in April. This is in the run-up to national elections in Iraq. The figures release coincided with the 10th anniversary of former US President George Bush's infamous Mission Accomplished declaration and the public opening by President Obama of Bush's new presidential library in Texas. Over in Somalia, the UN has announced that over 260,000 people died in Somalia's 2011 famine. That is nearly 5% of the country's population. Half of the dead were young children. In the report, the UN faulted global inaction for worsening the crisis, saying the world failed to heed the early warnings. The UN singled out the militant group Al-Shabaab, which banned aid workers from critical areas in Somalia. I think the failure there definitely was with the Western nations who continued to promote this proxy war in Somalia as a part of this global war of terror. All of the proxy armies operating there is resources to continue warfare, but not for welfare. In Syria, a lot of bad news as usual. In Syria, forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad are being accused of killing up to 100 people, including civilians. Opposition activists say the killings occurred when government and militia fighters raided the village of Al-Baida. The attack came hours after rebels killed at least 6 pro-Assad fighters travelling aboard a bus. The most recent escalation of the conflict was the multiple bombing of the areas of Damascus over the weekend. There were a series of explosions around the capital of Damascus on Sunday, and these were the result of Israeli missiles in a completely unprovoked attack. Israel justified this attack by citing that they were acting in preemptive self-defense, claiming that the Assad government was planning to move rockets which had been stored in Damascus to Lebanon to put them in the hands of Hezbollah, the Shiite militia in Lebanon, and that Israel perceived that as a threat and therefore took preemptive action to attack Syria without warning. Now, the sites that were struck included a scientific research facility and several barracks in Damascus of the Presidential Guard and elite troop formations. So there were never any missiles being destroyed, and the suggestion of the missiles, does seem to be a complete red herring to justify this act of war. Indeed, the Syrian government has called the strikes an act of war and stated to the UN that opened the door to all possibilities. In a statement, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon urged all sides to exercise maximum restraint and respect the national sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries. Usual UN apologism for piracy and unprovoked attacks there. The US has actually apologized and supported the attack. They claim that they're in complete support of Israel's right to defend itself by making a preemptive attack, because they felt that they were, at risk. And indeed, John Kerry was the US Foreign Secretary, has even suggested that it was the time to escalate the war because of the danger of Syria responding to Israel. And therefore that would be, the justification for US direct intervention in order to defend Israel against a possible response to their unprovoked attacks. It really does get hard to understand the rationale. Definitely the situation is escalating there. The New York Times reports the US had already been discussing the launch of strikes on Syria in the days before the Israeli attack. The talks were held with the US, Britain and France, with a proposed bombing model on the NATO intervention in Libya in 2011. Speaking during a visit to Costa Rica, Obama appeared to offer tacit support by saying Israel has a right to stop weapons shipments to Hezbollah. So, more news from Syria regarding the allegations of the use of nerve gas and other chemical weapons in Syria. Now, the allegations have been made. The complaints were made by the opposition that the Assad government forces were using chemical weapons against the opposition, and indeed it's being used as a potential justification for intervention by the US, and Israel and Britain both claim that they have evidence of the use of chemical weapons by the Syrian government. But the UN investigator, Carla Del Ponte, speaking to Swiss-Italian television, said that she has strong information that the chemical weapons were actually, sarin gas was actually being used by the opposition fighters, by the paid mercenary Al-Qaeda Mujahideen groups that the West is sponsoring and supporting. So, more news yet again from Syria. 196 died each day in Syria last month. That is from the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, based in London, in Britain. They're stating that an average of 196 people died each day in April. That's up from 190 per day in March. They also reported an rise in the civilian deaths. Half of the nearly 6,000 people killed last month were civilians. Nearly 1,700 were rebel fighters, and more than 1,000 were members of the Syrian government forces. Over in the US, a US Democratic Senator, Robert Menendez from New Jersey, has introduced a bill into the Senate to arm the Syrian rebel groups. The move comes following the Israeli attacks in Syria, and it would definitely be an escalation of the conflict. Over in Pakistan, there has been a lot of violence in the run-up to the national elections there, parliamentary elections due to be held in Pakistan. At least 12 people were killed and scores more wounded after a suicide blast near a vehicle carrying a candidate with the Ulema-e-Islam party. The attack comes a day after at least 25 people were killed in an explosion at a political rally in the Quram tribal area. In Afghanistan, 7 US troops were killed on Saturday, making it one of the deadliest days for the US occupation. A NATO spokesperson confirmed the death of 5 soldiers in one of the 2 attacks. In Nigeria, the UN is seeking a probe into the mass killing in Nigeria last month. The killings were perpetrated by Nigerian government forces. So, getting towards the end of the news, we're just going to take a break. Okay, welcome back to the Paxmundi show. Continuing with the news, in Bangladesh, all political rallies have been banned following clashes between police and Islamic activists, which killed 27. The police were using live ammunition against protesters, and clearly, this is this is unacceptable and disproportionate violence against what were, relatively peaceful demonstrations. Although the police claim they were attacked by protesters wielding sticks and rocks. Lastly, in a case of the pot calling the kettle black, the United States has accused China of hacking its computers, hacking into the military computers at the Pentagon. So the Pentagon official, David Helby, outlined findings of a new Pentagon report that stating that China's military continues to explore the role of military operations in cyberspace as a feature of modern warfare, and continues to develop doctrine, training and exercises which emphasize information technology and operations. In addition, in 2012, numerous computer systems around the world, including those owned by the US government, continued to be targeted for intrusions, some of which appear to be attributable directly to the People's Republic of China government. Well, what do they expect? Lastly, on a note of good news, one of the members of the so-called Cuban Five, Rene Gonzalez, has taken the first steps to renounce his US citizenship after a US judge ruled that he must do this in order to be allowed to remain in Cuba while he is on parole, following his imprisonment for allegedly spying in the US, along with 4 others. The 4 other members of the Cuban Five remain behind bars. They claim that they were not spying on the United States, but were actually trying to monitor violent right-wing Cuban exile groups who had been responsible for criminal attacks inside Cuba. Gonzalez stated, "What is missing from this campaign is for the American people to know about the 5 heroes, that the American people know that the American government put us in prison to defend terrorism, because that's what we must keep in focus. This case is about the American government's right to defend its terrorists, and in order to do that, they put us in prison." So if there's anybody out there who'd like to call in and chat, if you've got views on what's happening in Syria or any of the other theatres in the ever-expanding global war of terror, please call in. On the occupation of Mali, it looks like what was meant to be a temporary intervention is going to become a long-term occupation, with the French government stating that they are going to keep over 1,000 troops in Mali long term. The US is sending more special forces troops into Mali for training purposes as a part of the AFRICOM program. And the UN Security Council has authorized the deployment of 12,500 peacekeeping troops, which will establish bases in various parts of Mali. The UN forces also to take place alongside the 6,000 regional African force from ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, who have been also fighting the armed Tuareg and Islamist groups in the north of Mali. So tonight's main topic will be the Boston bombing. The Boston bombing. It happened so unexpectedly, and then, so quickly. We were given information about the perpetrators, and the perpetrators were hunted down in an unprecedented military lockdown of the city of Boston. So there was a lot of information with lots of changing details, and now we've been told that the surviving terrorist suspect, Dokudev Tsanev, actually has now confessed to carrying out the bombings, to planning more bombings in New York, and giving them all of the details. This happened before he had been read his Miranda rights, or advised that he could have a lawyer present, and it really does bring into question how this information was obtained. So just to kind of recap, we had this unexpected bombing of the Boston Marathon, and then this manhunt for the two alleged suspects, Tamerlan and Dokar Tsanev. We've been told that they were monitored by the FBI, and this was later revealed. The evidence would appear that this involvement with the FBI had been going on for some years, that the FBI had been following them, and indeed that they'd been involved with the FBI. So the day that the bombings happened, the FBI claimed ignorance over the identity of the two Boston bombing suspects, and called on the public to identify and find the suspects. Now, it would later appear that from interviews given to Russia Today TV by the family of the Tsanev brothers, their mother in particular, she informed Russia Today that the biggest suspicion around the case for her son's innocence, because this is what she claims. She claims her sons, she believes her sons were innocent of these crimes, had been the constant FBI surveillance of her sons and of the whole family. So the whole family, the Tsanev family, living in Kazakhstan had been interviewed and monitored over several years. And the older brother, Tamerlan, had a long-term involvement with the FBI. Now, the FBI were telling her and the family that Tamerlan was really an extremist leader and that they were afraid of him. They told the family that whatever information he's getting from extremist Chechen websites, and that these Chechen websites were controlling him. They were controlling his every step. And now the FBI is saying that, this is a terrorist act. And clearly, the family refused to accept the guilt of the sons, the brothers, Tamerlan and Dokidev Tsanev. And indeed, there is a lot of questions about this, that we need to examine it more closely. What happened, when it happened, the narrative. It was an ever-changing narrative. So once the suspects had been identified, the brothers had been identified, then we were told that the next day they had committed 2 more crimes. Rather than, lying low, they had actually been involved in an armed robbery of a store, and also in the murder of a policeman at the MIT, Michigan Institute of Technology campus. So those were 2 things that were said, and that then later they hijacked a black Mercedes SUV, and that this was the vehicle that they were in when they were intercepted by the police and FBI. So quite a few things there to look at. The claim that they were that they'd been involved in the robbery of a store was later discounted, and it was stated by the Boston police that this was not the case. Their involvement in the death of this MIT policeman, again, there's been no evidence to suggest that this was actually the case and that they were involved in this. The issue of the hijacking of the vehicle, the black Mercedes SUV, from its occupier, and the allegations that they made statements to this unknown person from whom they hijacked the vehicle that they were going to carry out further atrocities and bombings. It has been now suggested that in fact the elder brother, Tamerlan, actually owned a black Mercedes SUV, the same type of vehicle that they allegedly hijacked. So certainly some questions, to be asked there over the details of what happened. And then later, when the brothers were actually captured, the details of the capturing of them, they were captured separately. First of all, the eldest brother, we were informed by the news that he'd been killed in an exchange of gunfire after robbing the store. Then later, the public was informed that he had been shot and fatally wounded whilst wearing an explosive jacket with a bomb strapped to his chest. Now, subsequent reports identified that he'd actually been captured alive. And indeed, there are pictures that were circulated of him being paraded in handcuffs, naked, but clearly very much alive and unharmed by the Boston police. Hello, Barry. Are you there?
Hey, good day. How you doing? How you doing?
Yeah, fine.
I've been listening in. Great show, guys.
Say something, please.
I got lots I'd like to say, but I don't want to take too much of your time. I've been listening to your show and real good comments today, guys. And yeah, the war on terror. What a joke this is, eh? An never-ending war. I've been studying Boston just like any other attack on the American people in the last year. There is tons and tons of controversy surrounding the situation. The fact that these guys come up with this story after being locked up for how many days is very, very convenient for the government. Everything about it stinks. Right from the beginning, it stank. And it's just another false flag attack on the American people. What they achieve by doing that, wow, did they ever speed up their agenda, man? Unbelievable attack on the American soul. The fear they inflicted on American people is just beyond comprehension. Going door to door with fully automatic, locked and loaded weapons, pointing them at innocent American people on the pretext of finding one bad guy. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And to me, it was just a mass acceleration of what the government in the United States of America is trying to do right now. And if people can't see the writing on the wall, man, they're blind, because this was just an unbelievable blatant attack on the First Amendment rights of the American people. And they all cheered. I mean, they're so brainwashed and so in such a zombie state, man. I wake up every day going, what the hell is it going to take to wake these people up? Because it's right in front of their faces. And those are a few comments I wanted to make, man. You guys are really on the ball today, and I'm enjoying listening to the show.
I'm glad you're enjoying it, and thanks for your input. Where are you actually calling from, Barry?
I'm in British Columbia, Canada.
Oh, right, okay,
I'm very close to the States.
Very interesting, Barry, because what I'd just like to touch on is some events subsequent to Boston in Canada that you may be familiar with.
Of course,
this is about Canada's war on terror. That 3 days after the Boston lockdown, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police made a TV announcement that they had foiled a terrorist plot, which was going to target a rail passenger train, or so they claim. I don't know if you are familiar with this narrative.
Oh yeah, of course. But I followed that story right to the very end, and to me, it stunk right from the beginning. How convenient for that story to rise just after this incident in Boston. My feelings are that our government is just corrupt as any other government in the world. That our government is in bed with the U.S. government, with every other governments in the world, but it's not the government; it's the people behind the curtain. And that's a very, very deep subject to get into. But if people don't believe in conspiracy theories, man, all people have to do is look what's happening in our planet and how everything is evolving into a certain direction and what they're trying to achieve with these attacks on the souls of American people and people around the world. I keep talking about America, Nigel, because I feel that America is the key. And if you had an agenda, and I believe that agenda has been in place for